This is an international podcast transmission. Is anyone out there? If you're listening, you've reached the No Fixed Agenda podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to No Fixed Agenda presented by Bubz Naturals. Guess what? We are at season 2. Yes, season 2. So we appreciate you guys joining us once again for another amazing episode. This is a great one to kick off the new season. I am one of your hosts, Jeff Stoner. Unfortunately, Omar could not be with me. I am traveling still and on my way back to the States. So I know he is here in spirit. But we are joined today by Joshua Church, who is the owner and founder of Edge Theory Labs, the first cold plunge company that does an all-in-one chiller and inflatable cold plunge unit. We talk about the science of cold plunging, how he got into the business, what got him into the industry altogether. We talk about the Wim Hof breathing method, which kind of goes hand in hand with recovery as well. So there's a lot to talk about. Joshua is a Wim Hof breathing instructor. He's a yoga instructor. He's been named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 back in 2023. He's a podcaster. So there is a lot of great conversation that happens in this episode. So we hope you really enjoy it. But once again, thank you everybody for joining us on this next episode, next season. So we've got so much more planned for you guys. All right, let's get into it.
This is No Fixed Agenda, brought to you by Bubz Natural. Their mission statement is simple: live better, live longer. Bubz helps fuel people to reach their maximum human potential through supplements sourced from nature's highest quality ingredients, while giving 10% of all proceeds back to charity. Learn more about their NSF sports certified collagen peptides and electrolyte drink mix at bubznaturals.com.
First of all, thank you for coming up and doing this, man. I've been telling Omar, I got one of your tubs.
Heck yeah.
And I love it. And I've got it. And I'll tell you the story of how this happened.
Oh, are you going to tell the full story?
I will tell this story because I got fucked on Instagram. And this is why you support fucking local companies.
100%,
what happened?
Dude.
Yeah. I don't know. This was mid 2023, like September 2023.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. This is what I want to get into with is how cold plunging has really taken off.
Yeah.
And with cold plunge therapy and all of that stuff, because there's a lot of benefits to it. And it's been really cool to see how this has transformed athletes and people that go to Omar's gym and stuff, and how that works for
the health and wellness.
The health and wellness, right? And so anyway, so all of a sudden Instagram starts putting out all these ads.
You
right?
you say ice bath, and you have 20 different vendors showing up.
Yeah, exactly. And so then it becomes one of those things where you don't know which company is legit,
right?
Which company
is real,
which company is real, which company is actually a good product. And so I started looking at a couple different companies, and your ads fell right into that mix of everything too. But you look at it as from a cost perspective, and what you don't know, you don't know.
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. And this is where it comes into the actual information and intellectual aspect of it. I was like, all right, I'm finally going to just do it. Let's just get this cold plunge. And I ordered it. It was, God, they don't even have this. They don't have this brand because there's so many people that got pissed off.
Was it Fitness Club or?
No, it was
Icebath.club.
He gave me the tub.
Yeah, I gave it to him. Anyway, it was one of these. It was an inflatable.
Okay,
it came from China, and they sent me. So you pay for
it just says ice bath on it.
It might just say icebath.club or whatever.
Icebath.club. Yeah. They're out of business.
Yeah. I feel that they're still in business underneath a different brand.
Yeah,
that's what
they probably are.
Yeah, because there's a couple of them that look exactly like it. Anyway, so I bought one of those. I bought it as, hey, I'm going to buy the chiller. Everything. The guys sent me the cold plunge itself. Didn't get the chiller whatsoever.
Okay.
And I was like, what the fuck? So I bought it through shop.com, right? And legit. You're like, okay, I can totally get that. Yeah. I sent an email to them, and the whole entire customer says, we're backed up. We're going to get this to you. We're sending them out and receive it in 4 weeks or whatever it is. And then I started looking at the reviews, and everybody's saying the same thing. a week later, I go back on. I'm like, I still haven't gotten this thing. All of a sudden, now all the reviews are turned off. You can't respond to anything on their Instagram deals. And so I was like, what the fuck do I do? And
we see each other almost every day, and he'd not tell me anything until.
So that's because of one of those things, like you get embarrassed about this stuff, right? You buy this product
And
where
now
you're
we're
like, and you get duped, and you're sitting there. And him and I talked about this for a long time. Oh, which one should I get? What should we do? This is a great one. And then this happens, and I was like, all right, what do I do? So then I tried to figure out, I'll just dump ice into it, back it up. So they didn't even send me, it had the plugs in it for the chiller. They didn't send me the hoses or anything. So I had the ports, and I was like, what do I do? So I found out, and this is why I love your company. Yeah. I found out that you guys were in Carlsbad.
Yeah.
And so I stopped over at the office just randomly.
Yeah, just popped in.
I just popped in. The guys were unbelievable. Yeah. And I told them exactly what happened, and they smiled. And
they're like, yeah.
So I told them, like, hey, I'm trying to figure out the hose situation and how to do this. And they gave me a hose. Nice. Try this out.
Yeah.
See if this hose works. And if it does, at least you have the idea of.
So did they bring the chiller? Did they finally get you the chiller or no? Or you're still just trying to hook it up with
No, so I'm trying to figure out what I can do as far as the hose. Like, I don't know what kind of hose goes to this thing or what.
Just to plug it up.
And I told him, like, listen, if you don't mind lending me the hose, just so I can see, and then I'll come back and I'll tell you guys what's going on. And so it worked. And then I went back in and I talked to, I can't remember who I talked to in customer service. Yeah. And they told me what the price point was for the chillers, right? Which is really what the whole entire price of the
exactly.
And that's what came back to me, and I'm like, it makes you even more pissed off, the fact that this company sends you the inflatable tub
with no chiller.
That's with no chiller, and the chiller was like, all right, now I know that the chillers are $2,000 $3,500 depending on what you're getting.
Right.
And so finally I was just like, well, what do I do? So what I did is I took that hose you guys gave me and I connected it from one port to the other.
Oh my God.
And I just used it for ice for a second.
Yeah. That's what I'm using.
That's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. And
man.
I have not stopped by your spot yet.
So
come on by.
So then it comes back to, I finally was like, you know what? Fuck this. What am I doing?
Yeah.
So finally I was like, I want to support local. So I called you guys back up.
Amazing.
I said, hey, this is what I need. I don't need the hot cold. I just need the chiller piece. Yep. What's the cost of the tub? This is the size I want. Got me all hooked up, set up, tied into it. So it was one of these long processes. And I told my wife, I was like, you know what? It cost me X. And I should have just looked at it and just said, I'm going to support these local guys. Just gone with it. Because you guys, customer service, everything. Even I couldn't even get my chiller to turn on at one point in time. And I actually think I saw you in the office at one point. You were doing a meeting, and I really wanted to introduce myself at that point. But the guy came in, I talked to the mechanics or the guys in the back, and they pulled out the little filter. Yeah,
the strainer.
Strainer. It had all his dog hair in it. Oh, this is probably why. So they plugged it back in. He ran it for the 90s. He's like, yeah, you're good to go. And it's been working ever since. So
amazing.
If you're looking for a good cold plunge company,
so there we go. Hell of an introduction.
Edge is the way to go.
Edge is the way to go.
So
it's a roundabout way of saying don't fuck around on the internet.
Well, there's how many products are out there that are like this that really sucks. And
buyer beware, man. You get what you pay for sure.
So anyway, now that I've got my story out of the way,
I love it.
And I wanted to start that up there. I figured that was a great way to open this conversation up.
So you're now introduced to Jeff's tangents.
Yeah. That'll be the first one.
The first of many. Great. I look forward to it.
Anyway, I wanted to get you on so we could talk about, again, cold plunge therapy and how you guys got started. Because is it you and your cousin?
Correct.
So you guys are both from San Diego.
I'm from San Diego. He's from Florida mostly, but he's lived here for the past decade after college. He came out here.
So what we'd like to do here on the show is make an introduction to who you are. And then, as we say it, it's like a business Tinder profile.
Sure.
Like, we want to be able to swipe right or swipe left on this thing.
Like, so what is going to make us swipe right on you?
So what is your pitch point? So if you could break it down from a business perspective and what people would want to know about you.
Great. So I guess the way to start is I'm basically like a pool boy is my job right now, right? I sell pools and maintenance pools, a luxury pool boy, you could say. But no, so I'm co-founder of Edge Theory Labs and started with my cousin a few years back. And I'm beyond that. And like I always like to tell people, started it by accident. Like I never was like, I'm going to go start a cold tub company. And there's this big market that's coming. I'm going to go make a lot of money selling cold tubs. So that was not at all how I got into it. I got into it through the benefits and through the cold therapy of the benefits of ice bath and breath work. Are you guys familiar with Wim Hof at all? Okay.
Yep. We do it right before every one of our competitions, by the way.
Fantastic. I love it. So I went on a Wim Hof method retreat in Iceland in 2019 and it changed my life. Ended up becoming Wim Hof method instructor, started doing workshops, retreats around the world. I still facilitate retreats.
You still do that now?
Yeah, going to Iceland in March. We're going to probably do something in the Pacific Northwest in this winter time as well. Last winter we did Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So I just got really deep into how much these tools have changed my life, and I'm happy to share more stories about specifically how, and then wanted to share it with other people because this is incredible. We have access to cold water, your breath, like mindset, these things that are accessible to us and can change your state so drastically. And I'm like, I got to share this with as many people as possible. And then I got tired of buying ice doing my ice baths. I was raiding the 7-Eleven and got tired of buying ice. Yeah, I'm spending a couple $100 a week now. I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. So there's got to be like, let me just go online. I'll buy a cold tub. And I went online to go buy a cold tub, and there was nothing that was below $15,000 at the time.
Wow.
And they're these big fixed wall units. I lived in an apartment balcony. I'm like, I can't even put this thing. Even if I wanted to pony up, I couldn't even do this. And so that's when I hit up my cousin. I was like, hey, Rob, can you? He's the handyman around the family.
He's the MacGyver.
He's the MacGyver. We say certain things are Rob jobs. That's a Rob job. Like, there you go. You gotta mount the TV. That's a Rob job.
Everybody has a role, dude. Everybody has a role.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. My role is call up Rob and have him come over and take it from there. So I did that. I was just like, hey, can you help me hack a chest freezer? You know, the chest freezers. And there was a Facebook group about buy a chest freezer. You caulk the insides, fill with water, and you cold therapy. I'm like, that's the best next option. You're all in $1,000 for that. And he's like, what do you mean hack it? Like, no, what are you talking about? Like, you want cold water? Let's solve for that. So we did above ground pool parts, and we started tinkering in his garage. It's like a COVID cousin project together, and we got cold water, and we just kept making it better and better, and realizing like all of our friends were like, can you make me one? Can you make me one? We're like, I think there's a way to be able to make these more at scale to be able to serve the market, as I saw this whole trend coming. So that's how I accidentally started it, the founding story, if you will.
It usually starts with a need of some sort, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. And then it comes into a passion, right?
Exactly.
So what is the hook, Lang? What's going to make us swipe right on you?
Let's see. Swipe right and like hearing more about my How about this? From near-death experience on the operating table to Ironman triathlon finisher by way of Iceland and cold plunges, I have been able to build a multi-million-dollar business with my cousin around what I'm passionate about.
There you go.
I'm
Swipe
swiping right. Yeah, swipe right. Cool. You had me at million.
Yeah. How did you guys get from, because it's a PVC material,
the tub itself?
Yeah. So how did you get? What was the concept going from a structured tub down to that?
So the concept started. Our first prototype was a Rubbermaid tub that we got, like one of those stock tank tubs from Rubbermaid, and we like drilled holes in, put some hoses together, connected it to an aquarium chiller, connected that to filter housing. So you got 6 different hoses and a water pump. So you've got all these hoses. Yeah. And it's just super janky.
Imagine what that first prototype.
Oh yeah, I'll show you guys photos later. We called it the Frankenstein. It was just like, and it worked for some time, and then it didn't. It probably looked like what your hill over here looked like. Yeah. A bit of a lab of sorts going on.
Labs and crackheads.
The Heisenberg mode. So that was what it looked like, and so what we wanted to solve for was, how do we make this thing? How can I be able to put this on my balcony? How can we ship it to a customer and it goes FedEx to their door? How can we make this thing so it's portable enough to where when I move apartments, because I'm not in a forever home, it doesn't become this liability and I need a moving truck and movers to help me move this thing. Like, how can it be something I can set up and take with me? So that was like what we zeroed in on, is like, how do we solve for this problem? So we were looking at different kind of collapsible structures. We were looking at, there's these coolers, these like foam coolers that fold down. So we were looking at that kind of thing of like, can you fold up these foam panels and have this kind of inner bladder that holds the water, and then you can take it on the go. So we were just ideating and looking at different things really in my cousin's garage. We were like, what about this foam cooler here? How about that? Or this thing over here? And I was like, what about that paddle board over there? That inflatable paddle board, those stand-up paddle boards that are super durable. And I'm like, we use that all the time. That thing is rock solid when it's up, but it fits into a backpack. Right. We're like, that's interesting. So we reached out to paddleboard manufacturer through Alibaba, and we're like, hey, can you guys use your material and to our specifications? We want to build this container that holds water, essentially. And they sent us a sample. It was absolute shit. It did not work at all, but we're like, the idea is there. Now maybe let's make it a little thicker. Let's try different material. Instead of this type of of inflatable. Let's look at this type of inflatable. And we got another sample from another manufacturer and just kept working down the path. And then we got a sample. We're like, oh, this is the direction. Like this can be viable. And we kept iterating from there. So that was from that standpoint. But the real innovation came from the chiller side of things. So we were the first ones to launch in 2022. We were the first ones in April 2022 or March 2022. We came to market and we were the first ones with this all-in-one portable concept. So the portable tub, the inflatable tub, there was no other in the market that was like that paired to this chiller that we had. And the chiller was the first all-in-one, meaning that there's one hose in, one hose out. Inside, you have the cooling, you have heating on the certain model if you want to, you have your water pump, you have your vacuum pump. So instead, up to that point, you had all those pieces separate and isolated because most of the time they'd be like bolted onto a fixed tub. So they could be all separate pieces. But for us, we're like, let's bring all that together into one box that plugs into one outlet, connects with one hose in, one hose out, versus like you have 3 different plugs and you've got 6 different hoses. And so that was the big thing that we solved for and innovated working with our manufacturer to build that unit to our specifications. And then we launched with it and it just started taking off pretty quickly.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
it's a very Reader's Digest of a thing. But yeah, high level, I can imagine some of the conversations in that garage, dude.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I was like a fly on the wall in some of those scenarios, but yeah.
Yeah. I love hearing how some of that stuff comes together as far as how many iterations of the chiller did you guys end up doing before you got to where you did?
Great question. It took us a year before we got to the place where we're like, okay, now let's start lining up manufacturing. And then that took about another year essentially. So it was about 2 years of R&D and manufacturing before we came to market. We went through, I think, 8 different generations of prototypes before getting to the one we're like.
And then what was the time between doing the first Frankenstein concept to actually coming to market with everything?
About 2 years, exactly. Yeah, about 2 years. Which feels like a long time, but is decently quick.
I mean, you blink and it's over. When you're doing that much work, it blinks and it's over.
Especially when so much of it's a waiting game because it's like, all right, now we're gonna do another sample. It's okay. Now we gotta wait for the thing to ship. Okay, cool. Now it's like we give a little tweak and now let's send it back and now and so it's just it's a slow process. And we were both working full-time jobs at that point, and most of that was on Rob at that point. Like I told him, because again, he's the MacGyver, and I was like, I don't know how to build this thing, but I know that if you can build it, I will sell it. If you can get a tub, like if we can get this thing to work, like I can sell this shit. Like,
so you guys were developing all of this on your own? You guys didn't hire any engineering?
No, that's awesome.
No, dude, this is the epitome of what I love. This is awesome.
It's MacGyver shit.
This is MacGyver shit.
Literally, you should have seen
locked
Teflon tape.
Yeah. Wow. So no engineering, no nothing. This is all just
and
Rob.
Yeah, exactly. This is a Rob job.
Yeah.
And Rob was also he was not an engineer by trade, but growing up, he's my older cousin. But growing up, he was always like looking under the hoods of cars, and he was like always taking things apart,
Good
putting
with
it
his
back.
hands.
Yeah, exactly. And just always in that mindset of like, how does this thing work? I want to understand it, and so he had that skill set, and then he also came from a supply chain, working in supply chain manufacturing before, so he had that kind of skill set, and that well positioned him to be able to know how to like work with a manufacturer, how to develop something, and it worked well for him, and he was interested in it. But it wasn't until later that he actually got hooked on the ice baths. He was doing it for that, and then during one of our prototypes, he went on like a 15 mile run during our Ironman training, and he was like, oh, I get it now. I'm like,
I get it. Yeah,
see, I'm trying to tell you, man, it's almost as if this shit works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It happened to me the other day. My dad went in it after he had some back pain, and he got on. I was like, wow, like my back feels so much better. I'm like, yeah, it's almost as if this thing works. How many years is it taking you to go try it? Like,
Jeff and I both struggled with like plantar fasciitis things, right? And so like just adding ice bath into it is so much.
You get
better.
that relief. There's no question.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of those things. Like I even tell people, even if I don't get in fully every day, it's at least I do is just get my feet in, and I just stand there.
That's great. Or you can sit on the edge of the tub.
Sit on the edge of the tub, 3 minutes, like 2-3 minutes, just sitting there. And the amount of stress that gets relieved from my feet in the morning, I'm like, this is amazing.
So it even puts me in a good, since you've given me that thing and I haven't bought my chiller, so I'm buying like these ice things, right? And I'm using them, but I use them in the morning at 3 a.m. And my clients that are walking in, they're like, what the fuck did you do? Why are you so high right now, dude? Like, why are you on one right now? I'm like, I took an ice bath at 3:30 in the morning, boy. Let's go.
Or you just say I was going for a hike in the hills back there with some of my friends.
I visited the meth lab out back, yo.
Yeah.
So
That's
what?
great.
I know Rob's background
Yeah.
with logistics. What was your background prior to this?
My background was in, like I was saying, getting into this, I got deep into the facilitation side of things. So really understanding the science, the physiology, and then working with people and helping them implement this. So I was in the coaching space, in the coaching world. I was employee number one at a coaching company called High Impact Coaching, and helped come on. With the founder, we grew that thing to $6-7 million a year in revenue and team of 15 to 20 people. And so I came in as an operator, as director of operations. And so I was in online operations, but mostly I was doing sales for him. So I was doing high ticket sales. I was selling $6,000 to $10,000 coaching programs, high ticket over the phone, day in and day out. So I got really good at selling and really good at sales. And then I also started doing coaching for him. So mindset coaching specifically. And then I started working with some of my own clients. And just by way of being and meeting other people, I started advising CEOs of major companies, professional athletes. I'm like, you guys really? I'm just some kid. Like, you really?
You guys want to trust me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Here's,
okay, great.
take my money.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and it was great money too. I'm like, all right, cool, let's do this. And so that kind of set the stage for me of sales, of coaching, of facilitation that brought me to being very natural to do this and to share. And something about Rob and I, as you could probably imagine, what he's doing today, like I would hate to do. I want no part of what he's doing. What I'm doing, like he would be having a panic attack here, on a podcast, not his lane. So he does all the ops, the develop product, he does finance and admin, and then I'm doing sales, marketing, business development. And I came from that world. So it was this kind of beautiful union of those two things in a yin and yang combo that works well.
So you talked about near-death experience.
Yeah.
So
what got you into wanting, discovering ice baths? For us in the fitness space, it was like a big benefit. The Wim Hof was like even a performance enhancer, right? If you're over oxygenating your blood so that you can know how to oxygenate your blood during a race. Absolutely. So all those added benefits, that's why we got into it.
So I want to explain this really quick. Tell people who don't know, because that's still something that a lot of people don't know. So what is that as far as the breathing technique and stuff?
Yeah. So let's start with Wim Hof. So Wim Hof, this crazy Dutch guy from the Netherlands, and he's
Iceman.
The Iceman, right?
The Iceman.
And he was studied as, first he was like a circus freak, right? He was setting these Guinness World Records, climbing Mount Everest
in flip-flops and shorts.
Yeah. And then researchers started to be like, let's study this guy.
Yeah.
And specifically the thing that really blew him up was the endotoxin study in, I believe, 2012. I can double check that. I think it was 2012. And they inoculated him with the endotoxin E. coli. And he was able to do his breath work and just meditation and breath work. And he fended off he suppressed his secondary immune response, meaning that most people spiked a fever. They had symptoms, no fever. He was okay. And so they were like, okay, this guy's crazy. And he's like, no, give me 20 people and I will train them how to do the same thing. And so 20 people went with him to Poland for a week, trained with him. They brought him back. All 20 of those people had the same thing they witnessed, which was a dip. And what they studied is they found that through the breath work, the superventilative breath work, which is synonymous with the Wim Hof method, supercharging, bringing in more oxygen than you're exhaling. So you're saturating your blood with O2.
Yep.
And what happens when you're doing that in that breath work is you're boosting your adrenaline. So your adrenaline increases. And when that adrenaline increases, your white blood cell production skyrockets. And you also produce an anti-inflammatory marker. And so that helps suppress your inflammation response. And so it was the first time it changed, literally won a Nobel Prize for the research and changed the textbooks, because up to that point, it wasn't believed possible that we could influence our autonomic nervous system, our immune system. It's like you can't control your immune system
with breathing.
Yeah, with anything.
Yeah.
Like you can't think or do anything to influence your immune system, your endocrine system, your hormonal system. That's just it's autonomic. Like it just happens. But now it changed the textbooks that we actually can influence our subconscious mind, our autonomic nervous system. So this changed everything. And his platform started blowing up, the Wim Hof method. And he was teaching people and training people and taking them to Poland, taking them to Iceland and putting them in cold. And his whole thesis that resonated with me, which was that we are responsible for our own health, our own strength, and our own happiness. It's not the doctor's job. It's not your parents' job. No one's coming to save you. It's up to you.
It's not the pharmacist's job.
It's not the pharmacist's job. But we can get high on our own supplies, he says. We have a pharmacy in our brain that we're waiting to tap into. So that's the backstory on Wim Hof, and his Wim Hof method breathing is all very super ventilative. It's very energizing. It's charging. But that just opens the door to there's so many different types of breath work. That breath work is really developed from a similar style called Tumo breath work, where the monks in the Himalayas would be sitting there in the snow and with frozen towels and blocks on them, and they'd be doing that breath work and heating up their temperature to where they're melting the ice around them, like crazy things. And so he went and studied with them. And so that's where that comes from. But the breath work is so much more than that. And that's where I've really enjoyed coming into it. There's amazing books like Breath by James Nestor, Oxygen Advantage. There's all these different types of breathing techniques. And the thesis around breath work is that we have 12 pounds of breathing muscles in our body. Consider that, right? From our diaphragm, our intercostals, or the kind of the big mama ones. But we have these breathing muscles internally. We never focus on strengthening them. Like we're all here all day working out our other muscles.
Not just strengthening, but mobility as well.
Absolutely.
And so there's just the fascial lines in your skeletal mass alone that restrict you from getting that full breath.
And getting that full breath. And then like how crazy of a concept, especially in endurance sports, to think about you can improve your cardiovascular output. You can improve your cardiovascular health by not doing cardio exercise, but actually doing breathing exercises. Yeah. Like what a crazy concept and thought. So I got super just, whoa, nasal breathing, all these different things. So that's more of sets the stage for us to have a conversation around breath work. And it relates to the cold. One thing that's very important is you're never doing the super ventilative breathing in the cold or in any body of water or sitting up or driving a car, like very important.
Don't get high while you're operating heavy machinery, okay? Or in water.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Wim's going through a $300 million lawsuit. I think they just settled it for someone that died doing it by their pool. Yeah. And because you have shallow water blackouts. It's a wild thing. So very important. If you're doing that super ventilative, you're sitting down, you're laying down, you're in a safe space. But when it comes to the cold, then the breath work you do for there is more of a parasympathetic, down regulatory, in through the nose, long, slow out, humming, et cetera, et cetera. So we apply breath work to different scenarios wherever we need.
Yeah. And there's so many different aspects of breath, like he says, right? Exactly. I've done a breath seminar with somebody else from a spiritual perspective. And so there's that cadence of breathing was way different. Wim Hof is almost like hyperventilating, and you get tingly, you get warm, you get relaxed, you get high, and then you learn how to hold that exhale. I got to a point where I can hold like a 4-minute exhale, dude.
It's wild.
And you're just no breath. You're like, how am I doing this?
Why?
And you start going into different places in your brain and all this other stuff. But I've also been part of other breath workshops where it's like my body temperature changed drastically. I was on a yoga mat and I did it, and I can't remember the name of the type of breath that we're doing, but it wasn't Wim Hof. I guarantee you it was not. But I was laying on the mat and it was like a 1-hour seminar. I'm laying down and I just started like sweating if I was doing the hardest like workout in the world, dude. Like I was how bad I sweat when I work out, dude. And I was like, that's how sweaty I was laying down on a yoga mat, dude.
Yeah.
And it was just wild. Just breathing, dude.
Yeah.
And I started like different phlegm coming out of my lungs, dude. I was like, I wasn't sick or anything like that. It was just like purging, dude. It was, he used that word too. And it was so wild, dude. I am a big fan of breath work, and it's something we do. We're a High Rocks affiliate gym. So it's a big cardio fast, right? And so teaching them to do breath work, yoga, and then get into the cold plunge. Those are all things that we do day before. So that they come in, they're like, dude, I felt great. Yeah. And it's so beneficial. It is.
And you're not only hitting your body, but you're hitting your mind as well when you're doing these practices, and you're training these muscles, and you're building this elasticity in your nervous system to be able to adapt to stress and work with stress, both from the breath and from the cold, introducing these stimulus to force you to react, right? How am I going to handle that? And that's a transferable skill directly to your competition.
To anything, right? And so like you're like race brain, dude. Oh, like it addressed race brain, especially when you're standing in that corral, right? And they're going 5, 10, 9, and you see this countdown. You're like,
exactly. Where's your heart rate? Where's your mind?
And all the other racers are like, let's go. And I'm sitting there just chilling in the back of the bus, like doing my thing. I'm good. Like, why did you get into it?
Yeah,
you talked about. Now I would love, like, we got the background, we got the science, the benefit of it all, and what it's done for me personally that struggles with depression and anxiety. I haven't taken a psych med in, I can't remember. All those things apply, but that was the benefit to me. It was really from a performance perspective. And I later on realized that I wasn't now having like anxiety attacks anymore.
Incredible.
When I'm stressed, I'm chill out. And I discovered it. Believe it or not, dude, I was working in logistics and supply. I have a background before I got into fitness and opened up my gym. I was in supply chain and logistics, and it was a very stressful job. I used to run large distribution centers, production plants, manufacturing. So when you're talking about the whole manufacturing aspect of the tubs, I can totally relate to all that stuff. I remember going, and I stopped smoking. I used to smoke, and I stopped drinking, and I was like so stressed out one time. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to fucking go outside. And I just remember I couldn't breathe. I felt like I had an elephant on I thought I was having a fucking heart attack. And I was like, and I just took that big breath, and all of a sudden I just felt like tingly. And I was like, oh shit, there's something to this. Is before Wim Hof, right? And I was like, so now every time I got stressed out, I just went out back and I took a nice deep breath 4, 5, 6 times, and then I went back in and I was fine. And then Wim Hof came about, and I was like, oh,
there's
like light turned on,
yeah.
dude, right? And I was like, holy shit. And so then I started doing it regularly. But why did you get into it?
Yeah. Firstly, it's like on that note, that's amazing. Congratulations. That's incredible. And it's like, it's a battle that I'm always facing too with like, what an amazing tool. Like maybe you don't need those prescriptions, but big pharma, you can't charge for breath. So, but that's where we come in and we're like, that's our movement, right? Yeah. Because that's our birthright. And it just takes education and accessibility and facilitation. So I came into it not too differently from you, which was from a necessity. It wasn't like, ooh, this is interesting. Let me try this. it was like, I need help. And what that come for me, and this ties into some of the near death experiences for sure, which is that I've had a lot of traumatic injuries. And before I was 21 years old, I had 4 major surgeries. When I was born, my lung collapsed a few minutes after I was born. And they weren't sure if I was going to have brain damage because I went without oxygen to my brain. And then I had a whole different range of injuries, from ACL reconstruction surgery from high school football to the next year I had this rare thing called compartment syndrome in my quad. So basically I had from football a couple different injuries that built up. I had my muscle compartment was filled with blood, and so it was restricting all the blood flow. It was like super swollen, hard as a rock, and went into the hospital and they're like, we need to do surgery now. Otherwise, if you wait till the morning, we might have to amputate your leg because it'll be dead. Surgery sounds great. Let's go.
Sure.
I'd like to keep my leg.
Yeah, I'd like to keep my leg. So I've got this pretty cool, it's like a 12-inch scar up my quad. I used to, and there's like the 15 staple marks all the way up. And I convinced a couple girls that it was a shark attack once. But
did it pay off?
Oh yeah. Well, one poor girl, she started crying. She was like, I was telling the story, I was embellishing it, and she started crying. She was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, I feel so bad now.
I gotta tell you the truth. Get out.
That one did not pay off. Yeah. And then after that, a couple years in my freshman year of college, I had appendicitis, which is normal, not uncommon. And appendectomy is a pretty simple procedure, but unfortunately there was a complication in the surgery and the doctor nicked an artery. Ugh. So I had internal bleeding, and that's when I almost died. So I was in the hospital for over a week, multiple blood transfusions at 21 years old. And then I contracted pneumonia from that as well, coming back. So I'm coming back early for my first semester of college. And I'm like at this place where I have chronic back pain because of my knee surgery. I didn't fully rehab. And so it was causing this chronic back pain. So I could barely move. I had all these different surgeries and then appendicitis. And I was just like, I remember waking up in the middle of the night, coughing up a lung and like throwing up. And I just saw myself in the mirror. I'm crying. I'm in pain. I see myself in the mirror and I'm just like, I didn't recognize. I'm like this frail body, and I'm 21 years old. And up to that point, I'm taking 4 ibuprofen, 4 Advil every single day just to get through the day because I'm in that much pain. And so I'm thinking, like, at 21 years old, this can't be the rest of my life. Like in my mind, I'm literally like, I'm going to be in a wheelchair by the time I'm 30. There's my body feels broken. I don't have trust with it. It feels broken. I keep getting hurt. I can't, what am I going to do? And just the only thing I could do is pray to God, and thank God a nightlight turned on in that dark night. And shortly after that, I got introduced to yoga. My uncle said, come to this yoga class with me. I'm like, I don't want to go do yoga. Yeah. And I'm like,
such a hippie thing.
I know. And then I see,
Corinne, if you're listening, I'm sorry. That's our yoga.
And then I see yoga pants, and I'm like, okay, that's yoga. Joking. No, I get to the yoga studio, and
back of the room, huh?
The problem is there's always that one guy that's got the skimpiest shorts on in front of you.
Do whatever
always.
Dude, for you yoga, for the people that are interested in doing yoga, do not go do Bikram yoga first. Okay? Yeah. But go ahead.
This yoga was sculpt yoga, so it was the weight. That's what got me there. I'm like, it's like a workout class.
It's like a bro. It's like a bro for yoga. Yeah.
There you go.
And then I'm getting my ass kicked in this yoga class, and the girl over here is just running laps around me. Yeah. But it was at the end of that yoga class that we were in Shavasana at the end, and was like, there was like stillness for a second in my body. My body wasn't screaming at me. And I'm like, okay, what's that about? So let me take another class. And then I was like, let me take an actual like vinyasa classes without the weights. It's more just flow. Whoa, that was amazing. Let me do that more and let me learn more. And then the yoga teacher's like, you should take more classes and you're making great progress. Have you ever considered doing teacher training? I ended up becoming a yoga instructor, going through that process. I'm like, I started to feel my body start to change. Like I can regain flexibility. I can like regain strength, and my body's starting to transform. Started introducing better nutrition into my diet and getting off of weed and alcohol and porn addictions and starting to just clean up my life a little bit and being like, whoa, I can start to change my being. Like maybe this is not a terminal diagnosis. Like maybe my body can be stronger one day. Maybe, I don't know, maybe one day I can do an Ironman triathlon. That seems impossible. That's the craziest thing. And so I just kept, I just got started on that path of healing. And that's when I heard Wim on a podcast. And when I heard Wim on a podcast, I'm like, this guy, whatever he's saying is resonating with me deeply. Like I went online to his website to try to sign up for the workshop. And at the time there was only maybe 3 North American instructors. Right now, still I'm one of like maybe 50 North American instructors. There's not a lot of North American instructors, mostly Europe, but there's more coming in the US, which is great and much needed. And so I'm like, there's no workshops available. So I did see that he was doing there was a retreat that one of his top instructors was leading in Iceland. And I'm like,
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Those things are not cheap either, dude.
No, it was a big deal for me. And I was like, and there was that kind of voice of intuition that was like, do it. And I'm like, I don't know why I feel like I need to do this, but I'm going to do this thing. And so I did it. I ponied up and I did it. And that's when I discovered it changed my life. That first breathing session that I went into. So I'd never done breath work before. And I show up in Iceland and laying on the mat, doing the breath work. Okay, cool. Deep breath in, let it go in and out and just constantly going. And then the instructor just, any sensations you feel, breathe into it. Whatever's there, any tingling, lightheadedness, go deeper into it. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me work with that. I feel some tingling. Whoa, some warmth. I'm sweating a little bit. Okay, let me just keep breathing. And then I felt this tickle right here at my appendicitis incision. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. It's like a little buzz tickle. So I'm breathing into that. And then I'm like tracing it and the tickle's like working its way like up. I'm like, whoa, it's moving. That's weird. That's really weird. It's moving up to my throat. I'm like, weird. Okay, now my whole throat's like buzzing. And then in the next breath I take, I just start crying hysterically. Out of nowhere, like seemingly out of nowhere. It makes sense now. And I'm like crying and sobbing. And it was the type of crying where you're not even making a sound. You're like doubled over.
It's like the ugly cry.
The ugly cry. Exactly. There you go. It was just like, there's nothing you can do. And I just sobbed. And what was happening in my body, and then the tickle like traced its way throughout my entire body to every major surgery that I had. And it was this like whoosh, this wave of like release of that my body was holding on to from the trauma of these surgeries and injuries that I never stopped to think about or process. And I was left in that class. There was 2 things I walked away with. When I came back to, I was like, number 1, this guy fucking drugged us. Like he must have put something in the water.
I mean, and if you ever like, I don't know, what was your first thought when you saw Wim Hof when you saw him on you saw him on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
What was your first thought?
Crazy dude.
He's fucking crazy. He's
crazy.
like a quack, bro. 100%.
So it's crazy.
So you're like, for sure he drugged you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like that water. There was something to it.
He spiked my water.
Because I'm thinking like, how is it possible that I laid down on a mat and an hour later of just breathing, I'm having this crazy releasing cry. Like, how is that possible? Similar to you, just like you're having a sweating like you did the craziest workout. You're coughing up shit. You're just laying on a mat, not moving, breathing. Like clearly there's something here. Clearly our breath is a tether to our subconscious or nervous system. So that was my first thought. Second thought was just my shoulders were dropped. Like I felt like my jaw was unclenched, my stomach was unknotted, and I felt this deep sense of compassion for my body of, oh my God, body, thank you. I love you. Like you've been through so much. Oh my God. And it just opened up my mind to the fact that there's this body that we're a part of as well. Especially today, we're living so stimulated in our mind. It's just overstimulation. It's up here. It's one thing to the next. And when we're up here and we forget that there's this body that we have going on here. So it opened up this whole other channel for me to start to build a relationship with my body in a deeper way. And everything changed from there.
So you did a triathlon.
Yeah.
So did you do the triathlon after all of this had started, or was this something you did prior to a lot of the stuff?
Let me think about this. No, so I did a couple different Olympic distance triathlons leading up to this. So as I transformed to yoga, so that was like 2016, 2017. So all within this last decade.
Okay.
So 2016, 2017, let's say, is when I started like transforming my life and I started healing. And at that point, one of the things that I did was, okay, I want to get into shape and I want to shed the college beer weight and hold myself accountable. So let me sign up for triathlon. And the reason I picked triathlon was because 2 of the 3 sports are very low impact. So like swimming, great.
Yep. Yeah.
Biking, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are things I can do. And like, I was fine to run. So I'm like, I can do a little bit of running and I'll be fine. So I did an Olympic distance triathlon. I was like, oh, that was fun. I want to do that again.
I did not think that after my first try. That's all I'm saying.
I know. Well, no.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. A few days after.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
A few days after.
I was like, that fucking sucks.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, that sucks. And then that thought of after the Olympic distance was just like, people do a half Ironman, which is double that distance. That's mind boggling.
Yeah.
And then it's like, the thought of doing a full, like you're joking, right? I'm like, there's no possible way.
Yeah.
And then and that's when my cousin Rob, we started doing triathlons together. So he was like, I want to do that with you. So we built our relationship together as adults doing that. And then I did a couple more Olympic distance with him. And then it's after the third, you're like, oh, I think we can do the half. Let's send it.
Yeah.
Sign up for the half. After the half, you're like, no way, I'm done. There's no way. And they're like, let's do another half. Okay. After the second half, let's do one more half. Third half, you're like, I can see how people can, with enough training, how you can. So you start to build and there's so much to that. It's just like, bite by bite, step by step, you can tackle these audacious goals and then finally got to the place where, you know what? I think we can do it. Let's fucking send it.
Yeah.
And so we signed up for our first Ironman triathlon, which was in 2020. And I had to pull out the week before the race. I had shin splints come on and I couldn't walk. Bike was shipped out to Florida and everything. It was such a bummer.
Dude.
So after that, I was like, I'm done with this shit. I'm done. No, never. I'm done.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until we started the company, I'm like, it was still in the back of my mind. I'm like, I was right there.
There's always that one thing, dude.
Gotta do it.
Yeah, it was like me and powerlifting, dude. I was supposed to do a powerlifting meet before COVID, and then COVID closed everything down.
Damn.
And I never went back to do a powerlifting meet. And now me and some of the people in our community are like, we're gonna go do a powerlifting meet. We got to get that freaking itch. I still got my singlet, got my lifters, I got my belt, I got everything that I needed for that.
The reason I ask is I always go back to, because I played college basketball. And, and as you grow up and you play sports and high school, whatever it is, and I look at it as how lucky are some of these athletes today
that have
versus that have these capabilities to do this stuff. And granted, ice baths were always a thing, right? But the mentality of it, the mindset of it, and why you did it. If your football coach told you to jump in the ice bath after practice, you'd be like, fuck, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to sit here. It's terrible. You had this just mindset of no way do I want to get in this. Now I look at it as, shit, these athletes today have got such a better advantage.
Because they understand.
They understand it. There's so much more understanding when it comes to the recovery aspect of it.
Yeah.
That when you look at somebody who grew up in the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s didn't really have that advantage of understanding the recovery aspect of it. And you look at it and you think back and, you know what, I wish I would have had this when I was in college.
What would that have looked like?
What would that have looked like? Like how, and because I blew my ACL out in my sophomore year in college basketball.
Where'd you play at?
I played at a small school in Illinois, Blackhawk College. Cool. But it was one of those things, like I had such a hard recovery getting back to it. And in that was 96. So the concept of ACL repair was completely different than it was now.
They don't even cut that like your incisions that you have.
No,
they don't even do that anymore.
Yeah,
it's
completely different. So it's one of those things where you look back at it. I did my second one in 2002. So even then, you look at it as, okay, I know that getting in and doing some cold therapy, sitting in an ice bath is probably going to help me out with all the swelling, but you're just like, whatever. Looking back at that, I'm like, fuck, if we would have had that concept of cold and hot therapy and some of this other stuff we got going on, like how quick some of these athletes back in the day would have recovered.
And now it's not only more accessible, but it's the cool thing to be doing.
Well, exactly. And I sit and I joke about Gen Z and millennials all the time about this, but it's very advantageous for them to be in that setup nowadays. Even if you're not doing high school sports, even if you're into the triathlon
or just any sports
or
in
any
general,
sport or a power lift, whatever it is, the mindset of everything
It's
now
totally
has
different.
changed. It is
The concept of recovery is such a big part of fitness right now that
Yes.
it was not
that way.
10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was there, but it wasn't as loud as it is right now. 20 years ago, it was pretty much non-existent, right? And now you're talking about, go stretch. And they had you bend over, do a forward fold and be go on your way, right? Now it's a
We're
thing.
focused on longevity now, which is great.
I went to the powerlifting meet that I went to took some of my community members to go check out because they were like, we want to do one, but we don't want to know. We want to go see what one's like. And so we went to this big powerlifting gym down in Kearney Mesa, and great guy Callie comes in. He goes, hey dude. He goes, we hit it off because he's like, I own a gym up north. I'm taking my girls up. Oh yeah, come on in. He opened the door. He had this 4 big like old car like repair shop, and he turned it all into a gym. Cool. It is so freaking cool.
That's cool,
right? One of the bays. Now this is a powerlifting. Just all they do is lift and clank weights. Whole bay, dude. Ice bath, sauna, red light therapy.
Right.
Like massage table, like this is what you're experiencing now. And now most gyms that are opening up, I wish I had a recovery room in my gym or I had the space to do that.
Yeah.
And that's like the number one requested thing because they see the benefit just from a recovery perspective.
Yeah.
Like now that you're an instructor, talk to us. Do you know some of the benefits from a psychological perspective?
Absolutely. And most of that comes down to your nervous system. Right. So our nervous system is this dynamic way that our brain and body connect to each other. And what the psychological impacts, a couple different things. Firstly, getting into cold water sucks. There's no two ways about it. You get into cold water, your body's like red alert, no, fight or flight. And it's the opposite thing. We're wired for warmth and comfort. We're wired for safety. We're wired for survival, and getting in a cold tub is a threat to that. So on our deepest of hardware and software programming is to avoid that thing. So there's something to be said about the psychological impact and the resilience that you can build by facing something uncomfortable. And I think especially today in our world, like we are way too soft and we need those stresses. We need those challenges.
I like that.
We're a world of comfort, dude.
We're the thermostat generation, right? Where everything's comfortable. Everything's easy.
at our fingertips.
Exactly. So doing something like the cold and saying, I'm going to do the hard thing. It's no different than like a workout, right? It's that hormetic stress. It's that short term.
I don't work out because it's fun. I work out because it fucking sucks.
Exactly. And for how you feel afterwards and what that sets you up for. And it's the same thing with the cold. So it applies all those same psychological principles. You have the dopaminergic loop that closes when you go do that thing that's hard. And then also from a mental standpoint, you're lighting up the brain chemistry. Your norepinephrine spikes 530%. So that what makes you feel is that noradrenaline, that aliveness, that you showing up at 4 a.m. like lit up.
Let's fucking go.
Like, you studied the
They're
brain.
like, what pipe did you smoke,
exactly.
bro? I was like, it's called ice bath pipe, bro.
And so it gets jacked up your dopamine 250% repeatedly. That's incredible. You see those levels in cocaine. Like that's insane. And to have that repeatably. So you're lighting up your brain chemistry. You're doing something that's the hard thing. And then you're introducing a stress into your psychological field that then forces you to regulate. You introduce that stress that is the cold, takes your breath away. How are you going to respond to that? And that transferable skill. So all of that is the psychological mixing. So all that's on top of the benefits of like inflammation and acute inflammation and muscle soreness. Like all that's there. It's great. But now I think when we really started to study and see those benefits on top of, that's when it started to come more mainstream. And simultaneously you have this recovery being under the spotlight and you're like, oh wow, maybe this thing is a great tool for those reasons. And it absolutely is.
What is when it comes to the temperature of a cold plunge, there's a couple things that as we go to breathe degrees, Omar and I have gone to that plenty of times together. You talk to people that'll sit in the cold plunge for 15 minutes at a time, people that'll go for 1 minute at a time. So from this industry standard or from what's best for the body, typically what do you normally see from a time frame?
Yeah, great question.
And then from a temperature perspective, because it varies a little bit. People will get in at 37 degrees, and then there's people that go in at 50 degrees. Right. And then I like to keep mine right around 45.
It's a nice temp.
So it's one of those, it fits both categories. It's a little too cold, but it's just enough that you can sit in there for 2 minutes and be like, okay, I feel great.
Right.
Is there a point of diminishing returns?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's the question.
It's a great question. It's something that's not talked enough about in the industry, truthfully. So I'm glad you asked. Andrew Huberman talks about that threshold, which I like, which is how cold do you want your ice bath? It's like you want it to be as cold as you can comfortably tolerate. So it's like as cold as you can tolerate, essentially, without being like in full panic mode. I like to look at the research, right, and see what is studied. And based on the research, most of the research has been done at 14 Celsius or 57 degrees Fahrenheit. And when you look at that from a temperature standpoint, from a timing standpoint, one of the most popular papers referenced from Dr. Susanna Soberg out of Scandinavia is 11 minutes per week total. So you're talking about 2 to 3 minutes a time for 3 to 4 times a week kind of thing.
Wow.
So the takeaway from this is at 57 degrees, it's like the Pacific Ocean gets colder than that in the winter. Yeah. So the takeaway is, but she's talking about full body immersion too. Full body immersion, which is important too. So you want to get your lymph nodes under, you want to get your hands in, feet in, build up the circulation tolerance. I always like to think it's doesn't take as long and it doesn't need to be as cold as you think. But what happens is that doesn't sell. The sexiness of the ice sells, and the cold ego comes into play of being in the ice and being like, I just did 20 minutes and freezing and there's ice cubes floating around me. It's okay. There is a utility to that if you want to really load the shock of the stimulus in your nervous system and you want to train that, or you build up you adapt enough to where you want to keep bringing it down. But in terms of for beginners, I always say start at 57 degrees. And for most people, that's more than cold enough to still elicit that shock response and for you to adapt to. Work your way to get your full body in, hands and feet in, stay for 2 minutes, stay for 3 full minutes, and then you can start to gradually bring down the temperature, which you naturally will probably want to. I also am in that 45 to 49 degree kind of range, which I feel like is good. It's doable. Like 37's, some people love it. Great. Whatever floats your boat, but certainly not for beginners. And you don't need to feel if you're not at 37 that you're missing out on the benefits. There's actually not much research at all, if any, done at 37 Fahrenheit.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting because it's one of those things like when we go to Breathe Degrees and in the morning, like you go first thing in the morning and the tubs are like 39 degrees and I'm like, man. And there's actually a huge difference between 39 and 41.
40, Oh yeah. Oh, and then
I'll take anything above 40, bro.
And then wait for the difference. So like when we do these retreats in Iceland, we go into some pretty epic scenes and we'll do the cold exposure hike and nothing but your shorts up in the whipping winds and below freezing temperatures. It's fucking wild. But then we do the cold immersion in nature, and in some of these places you're going into these rivers that are flowing, and because they're rivers flowing, we bring the temperature thermometer, you have this like wind chill effect almost when the water's moving. So if you notice, you get into the ice bath, you stay still, you build up this thermal layer. And so if you want,
I like to move around.
Yeah, it's great. No, you can break it up, you do move your hands and feet, and it makes it more dynamic, forces you to focus. So when you're in a river, you get the flooding river, and because the water's moving, it doesn't freeze over. So we've clocked in temperatures as low as 29 degrees, 30 degrees, 31 degrees.
That just makes me cold.
And let me tell you, the difference between 37 to 32 is drastic. And the difference between 32 to 29 is what happens at that temp is that your body just goes numb instantly. So it's actually not that challenging once you get in and adjust because your body's numb. What's challenging is getting back out after and then allowing your body to readjust. That's what's dangerous and that's what's challenging.
Damn, it hurts.
It hurts.
Yeah, it freaking hurts, bro.
Blood mixing.
It hurts. Yeah, you start feeling like
shivery.
That's like one of the worst
needles.
I think it's one of the worst feelings when you get out of the cold plunge and jump right into the hot tub and you're like, it's like needles all over you.
It's prudent to wait a few minutes to acclimate, you know, in between. Typically, like I like to do the real good rule of thumb I've learned from mentors. However long you were in the cold for, give yourself that time before transitioning back to hot.
So when we talk about diminishing returns, we talk a lot about this in fitness, like shin splints. And like you talked about that for a little bit. But even when our training, when we build training cycles, we're going to do this hard workout. People think that longevity or harder is equal to being better. Not.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's really the stimulus that you give that particular client based on their fitness level. And you talked about like getting in at 47 or 57 degrees, starting off at 1 or 2 minutes and then working up your way to 3 minutes and then dropping it down. On the other side of that, what is that like after 3 minutes? It really is. I've heard, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. You probably know more than I do. After 3 minutes, he will. I want. You know what?
You say that like
this guy right here. See, like you and your buddy have roles. We have roles. He paints the lines. I color in the lines or outside the lines.
I'm just keeping you.
Yeah. So what?
I gotta humble you a little bit.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's not the big head is not an illusion. It's true.
I got it.
That's why I got big shoulders.
Ask your question.
Yeah. And so
he knows more than you.
Yeah.
Established.
All right. At what point after that is is it true? 3 minutes and that's it?
No, here's the tough part is that everybody's different. Same thing with
Absolutely.
fitness, right?
100%.
Everybody's different. Your cold adaptation is different. Your brown fat stores are different. So how much you shiver and when you shiver is different for each person, your psychological state. And it also varies from day to day. I don't know if you guys find this, but I find it's like some days I can get in and I'm cruising and I'm chilling. Some days it's the hardest thing in the thing. And so from day to day, from your psychological standpoint, your hormonal standpoint, where you're at from testosterone level, especially for women, it varies so differently based on where they're at in their menstrual cycles.
Yeah.
And there's such a lack of study. We're working on doing a research paper around that because there's such a lack of research around like when is it good for women based on their hormonal cycles and when is it not.
That's actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't hear any of that.
No,
because
all of these research is done with men mostly.
Yeah.
So it's,
and there's go ahead. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
No, go.
Yeah, but that's the same thing. Like when they talk about, there's so many benefits to cold water therapy.
Yeah.
But there's also some downsides to it, just like anything else.
There is, and there's a lot of blind spots.
Yes,
too.
100%.
And so some of when you think about one of the diminishing return, for me, it ends up coming into play when it depends on what you're doing it for, though, because if I'm optimizing for losing weight or increasing my metabolic value, I'm going to follow a protocol that is going to be a little bit longer in the tub, perhaps, and I want to get a shiver going because that's actually good for me. Mm-hmm. But if I'm going just for an energy boost and I want to get on with my day, like I'm going to go shorter temp. So there's a lot of it depends, but generally like where you want to get out and where it's like you're actually going into more harmful and like you don't want to go into more harmful states is when you're shivering uncontrollably and when you're like, or you have any headaches or brain freezes or you're in pain, there's no point. It's like, you don't need to push your way through that, get out, and then you can always go back in. But there's no like, to my knowledge, there's no like this number for all people is like your point of diminution. It's like how many reps do you do on a bench press?
Right. If you're coming off the couch, it's one.
Yeah, exactly. It's one with the bar.
Yeah. It's a push-up.
It's a push-up. Exactly.
What's I've heard it say a couple times is if you've got any kind of neck or head pain going into a cold plunge, what's the concept?
What's happening there?
What's the concept behind that?
Yeah, they say that breathing degrees, right? If you have any headaches or head pain.
Yeah.
It's just around your blood flow to the brain, right? Because your vasoconstriction when you're getting into the cold, so it's affecting your blood flow. And really, it's not like, oh, you're going to go into a seizure if you have a headache in the cold. It's just going to be uncomfortable, and there's no need for that. Okay. And you get a pain. There is something. This might sound a little scary, but there is something that happens very infrequently, and it's something that we learned about in our Wim Hof method training. I haven't personally, thank God, dealt with this, but I have plenty of friends and colleagues that have, which is called transient amnesia. So it's a phenomenon. They don't know how or where it happens, but cold-induced transient amnesia. You can get into the cold and you get out of the cold, and you can have amnesia and it's temporary, but you can forget
who you are,
where you're at.
Yeah.
And so it happened to a friend of mine who was leading a workshop, and a woman got out and was like just looking confused, and he was just like, "Hey, are you okay?" And she's like, "Where am I?"
Wow.
Like if they're stroking out, that's really scary. So there's no yet correlation around that. But anyway, all is to say is that there are some real risks with cold. Hypothermia is a risk as well. If you're in there for too long, your core body, you need to be in there for a really long time, but your core body temperature drops. Really where the more of the pain can come from is like you were saying, when you get out and you readjust, because now you have your warm and cold blood start mixing, which is painful. And that's really an important part of the immersion, especially when you're doing it in Iceland and you're getting out and it's freezing temperatures outside and you don't have warm to go into. So why they say the if you have a headache, get out, or neck pain, get out. I think it's like you're just about to have a brain freeze and it's uncomfortable and that's not good, and that can be painful and scary, and there's no need for that. But it's not like you're going to have a seizure if you have a headache or anything like that.
Yeah. So I want to come to a close a little bit on this, but I'm quite interested to know, like, all the stuff that we've talked about as far as time frames and temperatures and some of that stuff. How had that affected the way you guys started your business and what the information was putting out there to people?
Yeah.
Granted, there was already a couple cold plunges companies that were out there already, but what were some of the struggles that you guys saw based on some of this information we've talked about today that you've had to negotiate? Okay, we need to say this versus that. And because obviously there's some really great selling points about it, but there's
like anything else.
It's just like anything else.
So when we first launched, it was very much like on our banner of our homepage was 3 minutes a day for a healthier mind, stronger body, and faster recovery, right? That was like our line. And so it was just like focused on 3 minutes each day. So based on that research, we shifted away from that like 3 minutes a day prescription, if you will.
Yeah.
But really what we mostly found is an opportunity for education in the space, because it's a lot like Wild West right now for cold immersion and breathwork even. And it's a lot of influencers doing things, sharing things. Like some people are bringing snorkels into their ice bath and they're like, stay under for 10 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. Don't be
probably not. Yeah, exactly. Take the cape off.
Yeah.
So there's what we found more is like there's an opportunity to really bring a more grounded science-backed approach to this. And so we established a scientific advisory board. We have the VP Performance from Whoop that's on our scientific advisory board, Kristen Holmes, and she's helped us develop curriculum in our Edge app that we have that has guided cold immersions, that has, science-backed protocols on using cold for different temps, different times, durations for different goals and need states. Yeah. And we're pioneering research with it as well. Currently, we're working with UCLA women's volleyball team and men's football team with a study with Whoop. So for us, we saw it as this is an opportunity and a responsibility that I feel as being an instructor, because I had a unique situation where most people, I would say the majority, 95% of people you interview that are business owners in the space, they're probably just looking at the headlines or like maybe what a Huberman podcast is.
Yeah.
And so there's that. And so people are going with the pop culture. So we just saw it as there's an opportunity to take a stand and plant our flag in the sand and be like, we are education, we are science-backed, education-based, like we're here to facilitate and lead in a high integrity way and really understand and bring this and bring the blind spots that come with it too, like women's health, like some of the studies around, there's lack of studies around cold showers, for example, or lower temperatures. So what are the blind spots? And so we saw it more as a responsibility and an opportunity to evolve with that and make that a pillar.
I think that's powerful, dude, because at the end of the day, it's just like fitness, right? That's my one complaint and reason, one of the many reasons why I got into fitness is because, you get on the internet or you get on social media and you have some guy starving himself at 900 calories a day because they want to lose a certain amount of weight or doing something absolutely asinine when it comes to supplementation of some sort, right? And I think the fact that you guys are taking an educated approach to cold water is so powerful because I think there's so much bullshit out there, right? And you got the guys with the snorkels and you got the people that are freaking standing on vibrating tablets going, this is going to burn 5,000 calories so I can go have that fucking cheeseburger and I'm going to still lose weight. Like, get the fuck out of here with that shit. And come on. There's such a realistic approach for fitness, for cold water therapy, for self-care that's way better than going to the pharmacy.
Totally.
And so kudos to Edge and to yourself and your partner for doing that. Yep. I appreciate it. Being in the fitness space,
respect.
It's highly appreciated.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So thanks, Joshua. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
This has been a really fun conversation. It's one of those things that I've always wanted to learn more about, just from the cold plunge aspect of it, but being a fan of your company in itself and the way you guys have treated your customer.
Love it.
So to speak.
Very happy to hear that.
Thank you very much.
That says a lot. Absolutely. Can't wait to get some of my gym.
Let's go. Let's get you right. Let's get you right. All right, fellas.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
This has been an international podcast transmission of No Fixed Agenda presented by Bubz Naturals. You can rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast episodes. NFA, over and out.